Hello, I'm going to share a data analysis that I did for the new studio to kind of help us decide what movies we should be making. We're going to use data from two sources, the Numbers Movie Budgets and the Internet Moving Database. And we're going to be looking mainly at ROI today as kind of a key metric as we compare to some of our variables here. The goal to be maximizing profit, as I've outlined above. And we're going to take a look at, from these two sources of data, we'll start with the top 10 most profitable movies in terms of ROI. And you can see here that Avatar takes the top spot, and there's a lot of blockbusters here, Titanic, The Avengers. These are just things to think about as we begin here. A lot of these blockbusters, whether or not they're practical to make or not, will be up to us at a later time, perhaps, but it's just something that we can think about. And we can also think about the success of these movies in terms of the year they were released. If we look at the 50 highest ROIs, I've highlighted Titanic there on the left side of the bar graph. And we can kind of see a general trend. Production budgets increase as time goes on, and so have ticket prices. And so we can kind of see a general trend of increase there. One of the things to think about that I wanted to highlight specifically was production budgets versus ROI. This is a scatter plot of our movies here, and it's following somewhat of a general trend, but I wanted to kind of highlight our target production budget, where we think we want that to be. You have a number of movies here in the about $100 million to $200 million range of production budgets, where our ROIs are looking at around $500 million to $1 billion. These are movies that we could be focusing on, and this is kind of a target range we could be thinking about if we want to move away from possibly some of those blockbusters we saw in the first slide, at least to start out. And again, looking at some of these movies in terms of genre, when we think about blockbusters, we think action and adventure, a lot of science fiction, things like that. This bar graph shows us the number of movies in our top 10% of ROIs for each specific genre, and action and adventure very high. But comedy also is nicely represented, and I wanted to kind of highlight that in terms of something to think about. And we can see from this bar graph here, we can have our production budgets here of the top comedies and as our worldwide grosses and ROIs. And I think these are some of the movies we can be thinking about, kind of thinking about what makes them so successful, identifying the creative teams behind them, using these kind of as a starting point, perhaps for some of our movies, if we want to have more modest production budgets, but still very successful grosses and ROIs. These are kind of the success stories we can look at. One more thing I wanted to highlight was the average rating. This is a feature that IMDb has that may or may not be as useful to the production process. We have a good number, and I've used this box plot to kind of highlight the middle range of ROIs per each rating on IMDb. So if you look at, for example, something like a 7 or an 8, you will see higher ROIs for the higher ratings. You will also see more outliers. Those are the little dots above each box in kind of the 6 and 7 range. So these are the kind of ranges of user ratings that kind of correspond to a more successful film. It's not a perfect system. You can look at the number of movies with a 1 is higher, almost comparable to the number of movies with a 6 in terms of average rating and ROI. So, you might have some skewing there in the data from users that kind of want to bring a movie's rating down. But in general, I think keeping the user through test screenings, through the production process, whatever we have to do to kind of keep the customer, the user, as part of our thought process throughout production, I think is something that we're going to want to strongly be thinking about and considering. And again, using that ROI, making sure we're not focused too much on the worldwide gross. That will come you know, a movie like Avatar: The Avengers, um, you know, is great, but there's plenty of production budgets that were smaller that we can use to think about in terms of maximizing profit, at least in our early films. And what is unique about these movies? You know, it's all about the people, it's all about the processes. That is something we're going to need to explore as we move throughout production. If there's any questions, I can be reached at the email address below, and thank you very much.